Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It's the Vegas Take Hour number 3. We got Chris Wynn. I almost said in studio, but in my kitchen, actually.
Technically, it is in studio, though, Brian.
Yeah, unbelievable. It is Sharp and Shapiro, the Vegas Take on a Monday, the Monday edition from Brian Shapiro's kitchen. Back at you. We'll take some more calls a little bit later in the show. By the way, did Donald Trump say he was aroused in a press conference yesterday? Was he looking at Megyn Kelly? What's going on? Maybe it was Jim Acosta that aroused him. Well, we got the audio to prove that. No. That'll be coming up here.
It would be Kayleigh McEnany.
I don't think he said he was aroused, guys, but didn't he say he was watching the video, right? And he said, that's a good-looking guy right there. I'm pretty sure he did.
No, he was talking about...
He did say that, though, right?
He was talking about Andrew Cuomo.
Yes.
Yeah, because they played the video and the audio didn't come on.
Good-looking guy.
He goes, yeah, good-looking guy.
That's a handsome gentleman right there.
I do like how off the cuff Trump is in situations like that.
He's certainly off the cuff.
No other president has ever thought about doing anything like that before. So
right.
Donald Trump is off the cuffness all over the place.
Very refreshing.
If only the
to
day
watch his press
if only a couple days after. If only a couple days after 9/11, George W. Bush talked about the ratings he had during his press conference. Boy, that would be incredible. Anyway. The guy joining us on the line right now, we like to talk to local business owners, and obviously there's a lot of people out there that are struggling. Now, I don't think that's an excuse or a reason to put everybody in harm's way and go on strike with hundreds of people on the Strip. But with that being said, I certainly speak for myself. I say I have a tremendous amount of sympathy for those who are struggling in the Valley, those who have local businesses that are good, hardworking people. The government is supposed to be helping those that are in need. Well, the guy we have with us on the right now, his name is John Bruchhagen. He's been on our show before. He is the owner of Infinity, the Math Institute, and he's having some struggles with the SBA loan that he's been trying to get. John, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hey, what's up, John?
Very good, Brian. How you doing? JD, Chris, what's up, guys?
Doing all right. So, John, tell us a little bit about your story of when you had to close down and the struggles you've had with the government, kind of the trials and tribulations that you've had to go through.
Well, first of all, I want to say happy birthday. And number two, I've been on the show a bunch. You guys have always been great supporters of this endeavor to try to help these kids do better in school. And I wanted to thank you guys for your never-ending support. But I wanted to, give you a little taste of what's going on over the past month from a small business point of view. And as you guys know, we opened up in February of 2019 with a dream. We invested everything we had and extended all of our credit in order to realize this. And things were, going pretty well. February of 2020, our 13th month open, was our first month in the black, meaning it was the first time
you made money.
Since we opened, that we brought in more money than we spent. And obviously rent and stuff like that is our biggest expenses. And we were able to finally turn that hurdle, and I saw the light at the end of the tunnel and thought everything was worth it. And then what do you know, this happens. And, I don't think it had anything to do with me personally, but things happen just like catastrophes happen all the time, and we had to deal with it. What was great is right away, the federal government said that they had small businesses and the middle class in mind, and they were going to find things to help us out. And this was before that anything was ordered shut down. And I was encouraged that, we were going to be able to provide for our community. We were going to be able to stay open. And before this was over, we were going to get the help we needed to continue to grow the way we were growing. When they first, a lot of times we only have a couple of people on the premises at a time, no more than 10 people. So we were always under the social distancing suggestions and stuff like that. And they were suggestions, and we followed through with them. We had a lot of stuff implemented to make sure people didn't contaminate everything. We had strict rules in place for the kids, and if the parents came in, they had to follow the same rules. And then the governor said something about businesses had to close. And the first thing I thought about was, the suggestions are one thing, but ordering us to close, that begins to fall under the subject of eminent domain. If I own a house and you tell me you have to build a highway where my house is, the government kind of does have the right to just take my house, but the Constitution says that they must compensate me a fair market value. So I feel like if the government suggests people not to go out, it's one thing. But if they demand businesses to close, that falls under eminent domain. But to be honest, I wasn't getting all my legal gears going because I said whatever. A loan would be fine. Let me just get through this, and then we could continue to grow. So as soon as we were declared a national emergency, I applied for the SBA loan as instructed. And I got a response right away saying that Nevada was not a disaster zone. And I wrote them right back saying, you must have not gotten the news because I applied as soon as that was the case. And then they never wrote back to me. But I applied. I have filled out the application. It was very long, very tedious. I got halfway through it and saved it. I went back the next day, and they had a new system up. So this was the 15th I first applied when we first had the state of emergency.
You're saying March 15th?
Yeah, March 15th.
Okay.
Then on March 19th, they had a new system up, so I wasn't able to complete my original application. They had a new one where you had to print out all the PDF documents, scan them, and then resubmit them into a mailbox. Okay, no problem. So I did all that. That took me a long time. That was quite tedious. And 3 days later, they said they had a new system. I think that's like the 23rd of March. They had a new system, streamlined. It should only take 10 minutes. Even if you've applied before, please refill out this one so that way we could have everything organized. And I understood, they're going through it. I'm sure they didn't know what they were doing. And to do in 1 week, they said they streamlined the process, no problem. So I applied a third time, and I got a confirmation number that they received my application. But I didn't receive any email saying that it's on the process. I, never got nothing. I emailed them on the 13th, the 17th, yada, yada, yada. Finally, on the 27th, a week after I filled out the third application with no response, I emailed them saying, hey, I just want to let you know if you received the application and if there's anything you could tell me, no response. I waited 2 more weeks. On April 9th, I wrote to them saying, listen, I've been hearing that the money's starting to run out, this, that, the other thing. Can you please give me some sort of update on if you've received my application? Is anything going on? Still no response whatsoever. On the 17th of April, 3 days ago, I wrote them for the 5th time saying, listen, I haven't heard anything. I'm really worried. They're saying there's no more money. I don't understand. People are saying it's first come, first serve. I know I was the first person to apply for this. I haven't heard anything from anybody. And I got from that one, I got an automatic reply saying that they received my email, which I didn't receive for the previous 2 emails. So I really, really, really don't know what's going on whatsoever with it. And then I called on Friday, and I got a chance to speak with somebody who was definitely not thrilled to be there. And and after I talked to her, I said, can you just confirm that you guys received my my application? She said, no, I can't check it. I go, do you even want my name or my business name or my confirmation number? She goes, if you got a confirmation number, we received it. I'm like, okay, but it's been almost a month. She goes, it usually takes 2 to 5 weeks for us to get through back to people. I go, okay, it's been 5 weeks. She says, you should expect a call within the next couple of days. Obviously, this is 3 days later. I still haven't received a call. I hope to receive one soon. Then, I felt really, really funny about asking this stuff, but I said, well, not for nothing. I heard the money's run out, and she goes, oh, yeah, that's the case. I go, well, if the money's run out, do I have any chance of getting anything? She goes, no, to be honest with you, there is no more money. I go, well, how was that determined? She goes, it was on a first-come, first-served basis. Now we're talking in circles. Then finally, and I felt really, really weird asking this, but I felt like I should ask it because it's all over the news. I said to her, with all due respect, I go, is there any chance that it's because I'm not a woman or a minority business owner? Because I heard that at least half of this money was going to be set aside for women and minority business owners. Is it possible that maybe, that they just got their applications looked at first? Just trying to find an excuse why I haven't heard anything. And she goes, do not insult my intelligence by telling me that, you think that women and minority business owners are cutting the line. I said, no, I'm not implying anything. I'm just asking because that's what they're saying on the news. And she goes, well, you're not hearing the right news, and I've been really nice to you this whole time, so don't ask me these types of questions. And I said, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Just that's what, I'm not saying the news is saying that. I'm saying the politicians are saying that, and it's broadcast on the news. And she hung up on me. So some other questions that I had that maybe somebody in power might be listening is, first of all, I would imagine Nevada, which is almost strictly tourism. I'd imagine, besides the mining and stuff like that, everybody who's employed here is kind of somewhat tied to tourism. Even me as a math institute, my customers work in the hotels and casinos. So when there's no tourism, I have no customers because they have no money. Why is it that we got less than 1% of this stimulus package when we should be the hardest hit? That's number one. Number two, all these people, this money was set aside for companies with less than 500 employees. Well, come to find out, the people that got all the money are these restaurant chains. And the way these restaurant chains got it is because they have these big corporate lawyers fast-tracking or whatever. I've heard of other opportunities where you can spend $3,000 on a lawyer, and they'll get you to the front of the line. I can't afford a lawyer right now. And why is it that these franchises are able to get corporate lawyers to represent all of their restaurants with employees, magnitudes larger than 500 people? They fall under the umbrella of their franchises, so they're less than 500 people, but meanwhile they're applying en masse and sucking up all the money in one shot.
John, I'm sorry to interrupt because I want to ask you a few more questions.
No, I know. I've been talking on and on for 10 minutes.
No, that's all right.
John, that was a very, very good explanation. Thank you for that.
Let me just start out by
a great timeline that I'm sure all listeners can appreciate.
Let me just start out by saying this. I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm sorry all local businesses are going through this. It's not right. It's not fair. And I do believe that the government is not doing you justice. Let's just put it that way, number one. Number two, let me ask you this question. I mentioned the government. Who do you blame, though? Who do you blame for this lack of transparency? And I mean, who would you blame?
Well, I mean, there's blame to go around for everything. I mean,
he's trying to make this political, John. You can let him do it if you want to.
Coronavirus. I mean, obviously not the people of China, but somehow the Chinese government had some sort of hand in this and not either telling the truth or not, whatever. Who do I blame for the economic situation I'm in? I mean, I can understand every side of the coin. For example, if we saved 2.2 million lives, then this shutdown was absolutely essential, and thank God that we did what we did to save 2.2 million lives. If we saved 20,000 lives, or 40,000 lives, ruining the economy and the livelihood of at least 20 million Americans, if not more, I don't know if, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. And hindsight is 20/20. So
can I ask you something in there?
And I would agree with that, John.
Can I ask you something in there? But we're not going to know that, with all due respect. We're not going to know that we've ruined 20 million people's lives. I think we can make that assumption maybe a year or two from now.
No, we do know that.
No, we don't.
We don't.
We do know that 22 million.
No, we don't.
We don't know the numbers.
No, we do know that the workforce has been diminished by about 16%.
And we don't know if those people are going to be able to work again in 3 or 4 months. We don't know the answer to that.
And that's all variable based on if this Paycheck Protection Program gets extended.
Well, you just said we know. We don't know.
To $250 billion.
You just said we know. We don't know.
Well, the number's not going to be 22 million. But it could drop down to 8 to 10, which is still 8 to 10 million people. That's a lot of people, Brian.
But John,
keep in mind that small businesses make up 99% of businesses in the entire United States, Brian.
But John, let me ask you, because of course you just had an opportunity to discuss what you've been dealing with, and look, it sounds like there's been a lot of incompetence that has taken place on the other side of the line from you, as well as a lot of you basically slipping through the cracks is what I've been hearing in what you talked about there. Do you believe that what the government is going to do, and it appears obviously that there's going to be another small business type of package put together, right? That's something that's in the process right now in Washington, D.C. Is this something that could rectify some of your problems that you're having with Infinity?
The bottom line is, I don't care if it's a loan or a grant or anything. We're here. I have not lost one customer due to finances. We gave every single one of our customers, because everybody in Nevada is affected. I don't care if you say you can't quantify how many people have been hurt by this. Everybody in Nevada has been hurt in some way, shape, or form. And I have automatically. Now, my bills are the same. My rent is the same. My internet, electric, cable, security, all my bills are the same. All my customers got 50% off automatically without asking for it in April. A couple of customers said, listen, we can't even afford that. We love you. We will be back when we can. Every single one of those customers has retained my services for free. They don't owe it at the end of the deferment. They don't owe. they cared enough to spend money on their child's education. They can't do it now. I would do this for free, absolutely for free if I could. You guys know all I care about is helping these kids get better at math because they're just not good enough at math. Our country is just not good enough at math. And
I could definitely confirm that. John, let me ask you, you are a math guy. Based on the modeling has gone from 2.2 to 1.6 to 240 to 60,000. Tell me, if you have any idea, how do they come up with those projections that have been advertised to us, the doomsday scenario, so to speak, that Dr. Deborah Birx and Donald Trump and Dr. Anthony Fauci have been telling the American public? Where do they come up? How do they get those numbers, John?
All right. Well, first of all, I mean, amid this horrible, horrible situation, personally or for people who are dying, whatever, all these models and mathematics on the news and TV gets me excited. I love it. My higher-end students, I'm showing them how this relates. It's all calculus. All of it is calculus. And you don't have to understand calculus to understand what I'm about to say. Every single model has their variations, whatever the case may be, min, max, and obviously we've come well below the min, thank God, for, however that happened. And but every single model is the same, and we talk about flattening the curve. And every single model you see has, without social distancing, a big, tall curve, and the other one has a flat curve that lasts a lot longer. And now, one thing you'll realize is, number one, calculus is two things. The rate of change, which you guys talk about every day on your show. The rate of change is one aspect of calculus, and we've been studying that very importantly. How the number of deaths is less than the previous day means our rate of change is slowing down, which is a good thing. Even though it's still going up, the difference it's going up is smaller, and so on and so forth. The second hand of calculus is the area under the curve. And that's a really telling thing that's the cumulative of the deaths. So if every
Can I ask you a question, though, John? Can I ask you a question, though, John?
Can I just finish this one point?
Yes, go ahead.
The area under the curve is the cumulative deaths. Now, if you look at every single model with social distancing versus without social distancing, you'll notice the area under the curve is always the same. It's just that we have this imaginary dotted line of what our healthcare facilities can facilitate. And that's why we needed to flatten the curve. Now, if you look at every single model, the area under the curve is always the same, meaning the same number of people are going to get infected. If we don't have a vaccine within 12 to 18 months, the herd immunity will finish before the vaccine, no matter how much we flatten the curve, whether it's 2 months or 8 months or 12 months, the same number of people are going to get infected. So what I don't understand is with all these experts constantly on TV and everything, if the idea was to keep the curve underneath the healthcare system capacity, well, then once we are maintaining under capacity, we should be lifting social regulations in order to ride that capacity. Because if you completely shut down everything, but the same number of people are going to catch it, when you open everything, we're going to have another.
Well, let me ask you something in regards to that, John.
Then it ends up for naught, basically.
Let me ask you something in regard. We could talk about models. We could talk about the curve.
Which is why we should have limited,
I understand.
Let people go.
Well, which I think it's very interesting, Brian. Getting the actual data behind, or not the data, but the process behind where these numbers come from.
I understand, but I want to ask John a human-to-human question that is, to me, more important than models or curves or math, and that is this, John. And I think it's a very simple question. Would you be comfortable today if there were 1,000 people on the strip not practicing social distancing? I know you have a kid, you have a wife. Would you be comfortable taking your family out right now, not practicing social distancing, wearing masks, and protesting with all the others out there, 1,000 people? Would you be comfortable right now doing that?
No. And number one, I'm just talking numbers. I'm not talking about my personal opinion. But there's two different things. There's my opinion, and there's the rights, and there's the Constitution. My opinion is that felons and convicted criminals and the mentally handicapped should not own guns. That's my opinion. But the Constitution says the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. So my opinion on who should own a gun and the Constitution's words are two different things. I do not want to go into a big crowd because I don't want to give myself undue exposure. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that, my whole point is my opinion and what's legal is two different things. My opinion
Well, it's illegal. It's illegal to have large gatherings over than 10.
If you give me a loan, I'll be fine with my business. The
right.
legal point of it is if you order my business closed, the government owes me eminent domain compensation. Now, am I going to hire a lawyer and sue the government over my constitutional rights? No. But that
I hear you.
doesn't change the fact that it is what it is.
Right.
All right. Well, listen, John, let me be the first one to say this. I've known you a long time. I know you're a good guy. You have a nice family. You have a nice business. And I'm sorry, and I mean this, with all my heart. I'm very sorry that you're having to go through this. But the sad part about it is, John, is you're one of thousands and thousands that have a story like yours. Maybe it might be a different business, but you're struggling. And I have no doubt, and I have tons of sympathy for what you and your family and all those good other people in Las Vegas and throughout the world, quite frankly, are going through. I put ahead of what you're going through, the health and safety of Americans, and I'm not saying you don't. We might think a little bit differently when it comes to that stuff, but the bottom line is this. I hope you get the help that you need. It sounds to me that you might not, and I hope that your business will continue to be able to run. Why don't we have you back on, say, in about 3 weeks or so? Let's get an update from you. I hope that you can give us some good news, and how does that sound?
Yeah, no, Brian, hey, I love coming on, whether we're talking about the teacher strike, we're looking at promoting my business, or you just want updates from a small, love the show. I definitely don't always agree with you, but I've known you for a long time, too. I know you're a good guy, and, just like whether you back Sisolak or Goodman's opinion, the bottom line is the only thing that matters when people are giving their opinion is, are they truly have what they believe is best for their fellow man in mind? And if that's the case, then we could all share an opinion and we could all have an intelligent discussion.
John, last quick question for you. If the Paycheck Protection Program does not extend to $250 billion, will you be able to operate after June 1st?
Well, number one, the Paycheck Protection Program is not going to help me much. I qualify for about $1,000 because over the past year, last year, I didn't have a lot of employees. But these past 3 or 4 months, my payroll has increased because I've gotten more customers. I've steadily grown every single month. So the Paycheck Protection Program isn't really going to help me all that much. Like I said, I was just hoping for a federally backed, low-interest loan with like a 10, they were talking about, a long-term loan. So instead of having to pay it back in 2 years, you could pay it back in 10 years, a fixed rate, 2.5 or 3 for nonprofit, 3.5 for profit. And I thought, it doesn't matter if they just help me a little bit or if they help me a lot. If they just give me enough money to keep my doors open, I'll be able to build my business the old-fashioned way by just getting more customers, advertising more, and yada, yada, yada. But, my question is, for example, I have a family member who was making about $600 a week at their job. And now they're going to be making $950 a week through unemployment. And
right.
I don't understand how, it's my family member. I am so thankful that we are going to get a couple of bucks to pay our rent, at home. But the truth of the matter is, all these people are getting all these stimulus checks. The unemployment system is going to pay people more than they were making before. And meanwhile, that's $600 per week per person in Nevada. And God bless them. We all need the help right now. But you're talking about if you took 100 of those $600 payments, my business would be fine for the next year, and I'd be able to get through this no problem. I'm not trying to look over at my neighbor's lawn and see what they have, but just some of the things that they have set up, whether it's for women and minority-owned businesses. If that's not racism, I don't know what is. If it's for paying people who are making $12 an hour, giving them a 150% raise to not work, I don't understand how that's helping. Giving companies like McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken or whoever all the business loans when it's reserved for people with employees of less than 500, some of the things are just not making sense to me. And why can't, if you got
John, I apologize, man. I apologize, man. I'm up against the So we've been watching a lot of television. I think me and Chris could certainly attest to that. I think, Stein, you are as well. And during this time, really, what else is there to do? I mean, yeah, you can go outside, take a jog, and, order some food, but there's really not a lot else we can do other than watch television. So I've been watching a lot of TV. I normally do anyway, but certainly more than usual now. Besides the news, we were watching the news yesterday in the press conference, and me and Chris were red in the face. We were so angry at the press conference. We don't need to go there now. Yeah. We've been talking about it for 2.5 hours. However, we were looking forward to this show. I know I was, called The Last Dance. It's a documentary. ESPN did a great OJ documentary. They really do a good job. So I was really looking forward to this. Basically, it's the life of Michael Jordan, the championships that he won with the Chicago Bulls, the trials and tribulations that he had to go through. And it was interesting because the first 2 hours, the first 2 episodes were yesterday, and they went back to when he was a child and then high school, and then they skipped to 96, 97. Then they went back to the mid-'80s. So I'm talking about the things I didn't like about the show. I didn't like the fact that they kept going back and forth. It wasn't in chronological order. That was frustrating to me. I want to hear more about 96, 97, and then they go back to when he was in high school and college asking his mom for money. Now, that's all great. I want to hear about that stuff. But would it have been too hard to put it in chronological order? I didn't like the order they put it in. I also kind of didn't like the fact that, at least in these first couple episodes, I wanted to hear more about his personal life. I wanted to hear more about his upbringing. We didn't hear a lot about that. In fact, we learned more about Scottie Pippen's upbringing than we did Michael Jordan. I didn't like that.
Well, let me bounce this off you, though, Brian. It's not supposed to be just about Michael Jordan. What the premise of this is called The Last Dance. The reason it's called that is because Phil Jackson basically, that was the theme for that 1997-98 season. It was a record-breaking season, 72 wins, I believe, right? They won the NBA championship, thought of as one of the greatest teams in NBA history, and it was what the entire documentary is going to be about. And by the way, they just released the first 2 last night that we watched. It's going to be a 10-part series, I believe. But the whole premise is based on that team and that era, those 3 championships between, I believe, 96 through 98, where they won 3 straight championships, that second round of the Bulls. It's not just about Michael Jordan.
And that's a good point.
So
I
it's about
that.
all the relationships.
Okay,
but point. I do agree with you, Brian. I 100% agree with you as far as I didn't really understand why you're bouncing back and forth in time frames as far as how they were going about, because you would expect in a documentary like that you would just go like a straight through timeline. If you're going to go back, then I get that. That's fine.
Yeah.
You can do that. But there was a lot of bouncing around, and there wasn't. It wasn't really.
Not a lot of continuity.
It didn't seem like a lot of strategy to it. It was kind of like scattered that way.
So we agree on that. Let's talk about, that you always had, sadly, a kid in high school or middle school that was picked on or made fun of, and you kind of felt bad for him. I mean, it's hard to feel bad for a guy that's worth like $50 billion. I don't know if Jerry Krause was worth that much. But Jerry Krause, in a lot of these behind the scenes, people were making fun of him. I mean, there was a spot where
the general manager of the Chicago Bulls,
so there
the
was
guy who basically brought that team together.
Correct. Right. So there was a point before the layup line where Michael Jordan looks across and says, "Hey, Jerry, you want to do some layups with? We'll lower the hoop for you." And then there are some other things that said, "Jerry, is there any?" Jordan goes to Jerry, "Is there any way you could get any shorter, Jerry?" And then Phil Jackson even admitted that they had to physically stop Scottie Pippen several times from getting into it with Jerry Krause because he was so inappropriate. Now, listen, the Scottie Pippen story was my favorite part of these first 2 episodes. Yeah. Now, we all know he's called no tipping Pippen. We know that. We know that Scottie Pippen hasn't been the nicest, most generous person throughout his life. We know that already. But here's the stuff I didn't know. Scottie Pippen held such resentment to Jerry Krause when he should have held resentment for his agent. They signed him to what was it, an 8 years?
It was a 7-year, $18 million deal.
Now, there's
back in the early 90s,
There's no question that Pippen should have made $80 or $90 million. But that's not Jerry Krause's fault. Scottie Pippen signed on the dotted line. He had a bad agent. Don't blame Jerry Krause for getting an unbelievable. In fact, compliment Jerry Krause. He got Scottie Pippen, who at the time in his prime was probably the second best player in the NBA, and he got him for next to nothing.
Well, the Bulls fans definitely are complimenting Jerry Krause, but not Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen's not going to compliment him.
Second best is a stretch.
Well, it's not a stretch to Magic Johnson, Phil Jackson, and Larry Bird, because they all said that.
Yeah, I don't think he was. But
that's your opinion.
The real glaring stat was in '97 when Jordan made $33 million and Pippen made $2.8.
Steve Kerr was making 3 times the money that Pippen was making.
He was the 6th highest paid guy on that 97-98 team.
Bill Wennington was making more money. It's unbelievable.
But he did get paid with the Blazers. He ended up making $110 million in his career. He made more money than Jordan did. did long term.
Understood. We'll get there, and I don't feel bad for Pippen. I don't want to make it sound like I do. And you're right. Eventually, he did get paid. But here's the part of the documentary that was incredible to me. Pippen held so much resentment towards Jerry Krause that there were times where the whole team had to tell him to knock it off. This is the worst part about what we learned about Pippen yesterday. And by the way, I didn't know this. Do you remember when Pippen had an issue with his foot and he had to have surgery? Mm-hmm. Even Michael Jordan said that what Pippen did was selfish. This was the end of Pippen's contract, and he was trying to get back at Jerry Krause and the organization, not thinking about his teammates, not thinking about winning a championship. He could have waited till the end of the season to get his surgery. Instead, he decided to do it mid-season. Spitefully, he was a spite surgery, if you want to call it that. It was a spite surgery.
And Larry David would be very proud of you, Brian.
Michael Jordan was asked about it, and Michael Jordan said, he said it himself, what Pippen did was selfish. Now, Phil Jackson kind of took Pippen's side and said, I understand, but let's call it for what it is. It was a very selfish thing to do, and this series yesterday made Pippen out to be a really, really bad, selfish guy. It also showed how petty Michael Jordan is, constantly making fun of Jerry Krause. Look, Jerry Krause was a guy that said some controversial things. Jerry Krause was a guy that said, it's the organization that wins championships, not players. Listen, I wouldn't use that verbiage, but did Jerry Krause deserve the cheap shots and the disrespect from the players that he got? It got to a point where Krause had to sit right in the front of the bus because he didn't want to deal with that. I mean, it got so bad back there that there were players like Joe Klein that said that, they had to kind of separate Krause from some of the other players on the team. To me, that is completely unacceptable.
Well, the story behind that, of course, was during the situation with Scottie Pippen as far as his contract. And Pippen, there were times you're bringing up instances where Pippen got into it with Jerry Krause. We're talking about Pippen apparently was in the back of buses, like just dropping F-bombs on Jerry Krause and calling him names and just hammering him. So that was something that a lot of us, like you pointed out, just learned from these documentaries. What's the big appeal, guys, about this documentary? A big appeal, I'll tell you what it is. It's called Unseen footage, never before seen footage, right? It's audio clips. It's stories from players that we didn't know about back then when we were actually following this team and watching this team play. That is the big draw of this entire miniseries.
And the fact
you brought it up as far as like
the fact that we're sports starved right now.
Yes,
that helps.
And the fact everybody
good timing,
chomping at the bit, right, Stein, to get a chance to see something that's new as far as sports. And so that there's so many. And look, there's only been 2 episodes of this. There's 8 more. It's going to be interesting to see more of these stories that we didn't know about come out in this documentary.
2 things that struck me in this documentary. One, that was at Jordan's second year in the league. He had broken his foot.
Right.
And there was it was crazy. The doctor said there's a 10%, it's a small percentage, but a 10% chance if you play on that broken foot, and it breaks, even further, your career is over. Michael Jordan's career, he risked going out on that court. His career could have been over in 1986. I mean, there would have been no Air Jordan. There would have been no championships. But Jordan, being the competitor that he is, still went out there anyway, saying, well, you said 10% that it could end my career, but 90% that it won't. So I like those odds. So that was the thing I found very interesting. The second thing I found interesting was just how what's the word I'm looking for? How weak that Bulls franchise was before Jordan got there.
Yeah.
I mean, they showed
they
showed those crowds at the Chicago arena where they played before.
Artist Gilmore.
Before they built the United Center, way before that. No one is going to those games.
Yeah. No.
I mean, nobody. And then Jordan turned that whole thing around. That was incredible to see the night and day difference there.
To what you're saying, they played some sound clips from a couple NBA players before Jordan's prime, Mark Eaton, and a couple other players that made some idiotic comments and said there's not one player that can take over a franchise. Boy, were they wrong.
Yeah, he changed the game.
But also to Stein's point, as far as Chicago Stadium not getting any attendance, they talked about the indoor soccer team, the Chicago Sting, were outdrawing the Bulls in the NBA back in 1980.
I think when
you
saw after Kobe Bryant tragically died in that crash, I was watching a lot of the practice footage where he would swear at other players and get into it with other players, and they showed a little bit of that footage with Michael Jordan. And as you know, Michael Jordan got into fist fights with Bill Cartwright, with Steve Kerr. He got into fights. They're so similar, Kobe and Jordan, in that aspect. Their competitive nature. I think they're very different people. They were, sadly to say, with Kobe off the floor, very different people. But on the floor, to me, they were 2 and 2 alike. That competitive fire, all that Michael Jordan cared about. And by the way, he's still like this on the golf course and in competitive. Jordan is a nut. They're psychotic when it comes to winning. All they care about is winning. They don't care about anything else. They will make your life a living hell if they know it'll help you win, help the team win. And that's what Jordan was. That's what Kobe was. That's what Magic, Bird, all these guys care. And I don't think there's enough players like that in professional sports today. There's some, but not a lot.
Not Kevin Durant.
I said there's some.
Yeah,
but
Kevin Durant to me is.
But he's a different cat, though.
Is Michael Jordan 5 inches taller? Honestly,
well,
I mean, dude, he literally played. He tried to play with a torn ACL, and he ended up tearing his Achilles. I mean, the guy was.
I have no doubt.
We watched Kevin Durant during summer basketball go one-on-one about a year and a half ago against 9 All-Stars for an hour and a half after playing an entire 2-hour practice. Destroyed every single one of them and wanted to keep going.
There's no doubt that Kevin Durant. It cares a lot about winning. Like I said, there are some, but not a lot. I think there were more people that cared about winning in the 80s than there are today. But with that being said, Kevin Durant never struck me as the kind of guy where a lot of players just don't want to play with him. Kevin Durant didn't strike me as a guy in practice that would punch other guys in practice and scream and swear. Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant were exactly those type of guys, and I love that. And I think we need. Listen, you're not going to see another Michael Jordan in our lifetime. Not going to see another Larry Bird most likely, or Kobe Bryant, but. I love the footage of seeing Michael Jordan, and you saw it. He was yelling and swearing at Ron Harper in a practice, and they showed that footage. And, man, I love that. And I love that for a couple different reasons. Number one, this isn't about money. This isn't about fame. This isn't about anything or even busting balls. It's about Jordan doesn't like what he's seeing from one of his teammates. He's pissed off at him, and it's basketball-related and basketball-related only, and I love to see that because it's such a natural thing. It's like kids on the playground jawing at one another, but yet you have the best player in the world doing it. And that's the one thing about Michael Jordan that I love the most is that you can say what you want about him with the tipping and with the womanizing and you know, playing baseball and all that. The guy wanted to win more than anybody at that time, and I love that quality.
So he gets a pass for being a horrible human being because he's a phenomenal athlete, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Yes.
No.
All right.
No.
All right.
No. Wait a second.
Well, I don't know if pass is the right
Hold
way
on
to
a
look
second.
at it.
Make
Yeah,
no
you don't
mistake.
look
Hold
at
on
it.
a second. I said I'm talking about his basketball career.
Right.
Michael Jordan is not a good human being.
No.
Michael Jordan is a womanizer. Michael Jordan has been a horrific tipper for most of his life. He is not a kind human being. I've never said Michael Jordan is a good person. And by the way,
Brian,
I never will.
Are you a womanizer?
Am I a woman? In what aspect? Do I cheat? Is that what you're saying?
No, are you a womanizer?
Okay, well, my definition of a womanizer...
I would say that you probably are.
Okay, well, I disagree with you because I'm single and I've never cheated on a girlfriend in my life. When I say womanizer, I mean married cheating.
Have you ever dated 4 different women at the same time?
I'm not sure what this has to do with Michael Jordan.
And were they aware of each other?
I'm not sure what this has to do with Michael Jordan.
Just answer the question.
Okay, but can you tell me what this has to do with the conversation?
Well, I think that you're calling Michael Jordan a womanizer, which makes him a horrible human being.
He's constantly.
I believe that you are a womanizer.
Okay, well, here's the difference between me and Michael Jordan. Number one, I've never been married before.
Okay.
Number two, I've never cheated on a girlfriend before. I've been cheated on before.
I think you mean adulterer. Right? Womanizing's okay.
Well,
we can all get behind womanizing.
Maybe there's maybe there's a difference between
Your definition's
womanizing
different.
and committing adultery.
Right.
But I think no, I don't think I'm a woman. I really don't. I think I treat women with respect. I do.
I'm interested how this
Chris.
conversation about Michael Jordan competitiveness turned to.
I have no idea why.
Brian
Do you
Shapiro
think that Brian Shapiro is a womanizer, Chris?
I don't believe that he is.
Do you think?
I believe that if he had that opportunity, that he would take advantage of it and try to do it. But under the nature of the circumstances, the nature of his life,
you don't think he
doesn't lead to that.
You don't think he has the chops for it?
I don't know if I would describe it that way. I just don't foresee him. I just don't perceive Brian in that way. So I guess I'm saying that.
How's your luck with women these days?
No, all I'm saying.
How's your luck with women these days?
No, Brian.
No. Answer my question now. You want to get personal with me? How's your luck with women these days?
First of all, Brian, this conversation is. I will answer your question.
He has a beautiful wife at home.
I
What are you
do.
talking about?
I have a wife and I have a daughter. Okay.
Which
And
is
an adorable
wonderful.
daughter, by the
But that's not what I asked you.
That's what I have going
But
on.
that's not what I asked
now,
you.
now that being said, Brian, I'm saying if you're calling Michael Jordan a womanizer, and that's one of the reasons why you think he's a horrible human being.
There's many other reasons.
Okay. Well, adulterer makes sense, but womanizer.
There's many other reasons.
Okay.
There's many other reasons why I would say he's a bad
I think you
person.
might be nitpicking a little bit on on what name he's being called as far as Michael Jordan.
Well, like Donald Trump, for example, definitely
Absolutely a womanizer.
definitely an adulterer,
Absolutely
probably also
Yes.
a womanizer.
I will only
simultaneously.
I will only speak for myself and say
JFK. Roosevelt, Warren Buffett.
Womanizers.
All womanizers.
All womanizers.
All adulterers.
Yes.
I don't know how we got from Michael Jordan to this, but I can only speak for myself when I say that.
We normally have hate mail here. I think this was JD's attempt at doing a hate mail segment, except all the letters were coming from him.
I can only say and speak for myself that I am very happy with my personal situation right now when it comes to women. I am very happy. I don't speak for anybody else at the table, but I am very happy with my own specific situation. And I could be wrong on this, but I have a feeling that there are some people at the table that wish they were in my situation. I'll leave it at that. And I'm not a womanizer. I don't commit adultery and all that other stuff. But I am very happy with my situation, and I can give you a lot of names of people that have dated me. Not he, she's. And they would say that I treat them with respect, and I still talk to them. JD, how many ex-girlfriends do you still talk to?
Currently?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay, right, because it's probably zero.
Because the answer is
it's probably zero.
Because the answer is
fair enough.
Definitely zero.
Okay, well, it's not with me. You know why? Because I remain friends with women that I've dated because they respect me and I respect
You also
them.
don't have a wife who would be angry if you spoke to.
Well, that's your problem, not mine.
Okay.
That's your problem.
You got to factor that in as well.
Well, when I was engaged,
okay.
She didn't have a problem with me speaking to my exes, but then again, she probably wouldn't have had a problem with me sleeping with them either. So that's another story for another show. See, here's the difference, though. JD.
Boy, that was some documentary.
There we go. Stay tuned to The Last Dance. It's going to be very interesting the rest of the way, folks.
I don't know how that conversation
I can't wait to see if they win the
I
championship.
really don't. At least JD's laughing for the whole
Do they
show.
pull it out,
He looked like he wanted to stab me
Do they
throughout the whole
get
show.
it done? We'll see.
I predict Bulls in 7 over the Utah Jazz.
Well, I do hope we get to it. But it's a good show. I'm glad we have something to look forward to. And I'm glad that I believe it's 2 hours a week we're getting, right? 2 different episodes, hour each a week. So fun show. And I look forward to more behind-the-scenes footage. I want to see footage of Michael Jordan knocking out Steve Kerr. That would make it for me. That would apparently they
Or
got no
just a
big fight.
scrap between the two.
Can you imagine Jordan and Bill Cartwright? Bill Cartwright is enormous. Can you imagine that? Apparently that happened at a practice. Phil Jackson's a big dude, too. I'm sure he got in between them and tried to break him up.
Yeah, Phil's like 6'8".
He's a big guy.
Yeah, he's not small.
He's a big dude. All right, it's been a fun show. Chris, thanks for coming in, as always.
No doubt.
No time for hate mail today. It was just JD's segment to make fun of me, I guess, but that's fine.
I was not making fun of you at all.
No, not at all.
No, I was not. No, I really was not making fun of you.
Being a womanizer is not making fun of me at all.
That's not making fun of you.
No, that's okay. That's
Stein
fine.
could give him a double dose tomorrow,
It's
hate
fine.
mail, right?
It's fine.
Maybe.
Fine.
Possibly.
Well, because
All right,
according to
we
you,
gotta
everyone wants to be a womanizer.
No, that's not true at all. I don't feel – I've never said that before, and that's not true. I respect women a great deal. That is not correct. All right, we're going to take a break for about 21 hours, ladies and gentlemen. More reaction probably. If you missed our interview with Mayor Carolyn Goodman, we'll put it up on our social media plates at the Vegas Take. It was very, very interesting. Sean Hannity coming up next, folks. Please stay safe. Have a great afternoon. See you tomorrow.